Hey guys, welcome back. So today we want to talk about parts kits and what type of firearms are out there that are available as parts kits. And it's kind of fun collecting those parts kits and then assembling them, either having somebody build them for you, or if you're handy with tools, building them yourself into whatever it is that you're looking for. And we're going to give you some examples in today's video. It's a really, really cool niche in the collector's market. Jason joins us again today.
Hey guys.
And Jason really wanted to talk about this subject. And so here we are talking about parts kits. And there have been historically a lot of guns out there that weren't imported even during the heyday before all the import bans started under Bush 41 that just didn't make it into the country. Really, really neat stuff. Cold War stuff, because the Cold War was still raging when those import bans were implemented. Had the Cold War ended like it did in 91 and we were able to bring them in, we would have some really cool stuff factory fresh. But the reality is, thanks to all the bans on imports, we have to look for parts kits. And again, either assemble it yourself or have somebody do it for you. So one of the most interesting guns of recent times that is a gun that I always wanted to shoot. I always wanted to see one, always wanted to handle one. And they were just, and they weren't even behind the Iron Curtain. They just weren't imported. And that was, or is, the CETME L. Right? So if it weren't for parts kits, this gun wouldn't even be on the U.S. market.
Right. And that's the cool part about parts kits. And that's what would draw me to them. I would search on the internet, not necessarily for whole guns, but for parts kits. Because, there are good builders out there, and I can tell you I'm good with tools, but I cannot build a firearm. I don't have the welding skills. I don't have whatever it takes to put these things together. But I will do my research, find a good builder, touch base with them, and get the project done. But yes, this is a cool one. I didn't know these things even existed until one day you're like, dude, you're not going to believe this. The CETME L and the LCs are coming. I'm like, what is that? You know? And then we got one, and it was assembled from a parts kit into a working firearm. And actually shooting one of these things is pretty cool. They're really soft shooting. They're a blast to shoot, and it is a piece of history.
This is one of the coolest pieces of Cold War history, and we've talked about it quite a bit in previous videos, so I don't want to make this video about the CETME L. But, the Spaniards were the ones that invented the G3. From German engineering that was done during World War II. Germans defected to Spain, taking their knowledge with them. The original CETME, which was chambered in 7.62x51, came out, became the service rifle of the Spanish military, and then the Germans licensed that technology, and then they decided to build what we call the G3 or the HK91. And that's all because Belgium told them to go, kick rocks when they said, hey, we'd like to license the FAL too. And like, you invaded us twice. We're not going to arm you. So they refused. So that's how the LC and the Ls came into being, which is a 5.56 version. And it's comparable, I would say, to the HK33 or the HK93.
Right. And that's the cool part.
But softer shooting.
This is a gun that, again, and it's like, no factory was making them. They had to start life as a parts kit. Now, there's people like Mark Omar and things like that that actually bring those guns into a factory-built rifle that use snag mags, whatever it is. But it's cool. It's cool to see that now this is kind of a mainstream rifle.
So HMG originally put the first ones out, and they also did it with a builder's kit. So it had all the jigs and everything to fold, the receivers. They supplied the receiver and for your parts kit and all the instructions on how to put it together. I think the guys over at In-Range TV actually did a video where they assembled one. And that's going back a few years. And so, yeah, you can do it. Now, like you, my welding skills, high school shop class, right? Yeah. So I don't weld.
Yeah, I can make some bubble gum on there probably, but that's about as far as it goes.
So I'm not in the kit building market because I don't have the time or the skills necessary. But there's a lot of folks out there watching this video that do. Right. And they're looking for something fun to do.
Right. And so one of the things that back when I was doing AKs, like before I just kind of passed them on now, I looked for parts kit AKs. You had your like type 2s, type 3s, whatever it is, milled. I even found I want to say it was an Egyptian Mahdi with a bunch of like Arabic on it. And these were kind of cool parts kits. And I was like, well, this is really cool. Like I can build an AK that you don't find, or have built an AK you don't find anywhere else. And kind of the cool thing about AKs is while you don't find, original barrel Polish, parts kit or complete guns, if you will, where basically you have the few U.S. parts to make a compliant U.S. receiver, but in it, I guess one of the key things is like original barrel, chrome lined, original Polish barrel with all the original Polish parts, you can make as close to humanly possible a full-on Polish underfolder.
Yep. And you can go to any number of receiver manufacturers. They'll even put the correct markings on the receiver for you.
Right.
And speaking of that reminds me, because Definitive Arms just recently released some RPKs, Yugos.
Yeah.
Real Yugo RPKs.
Right. Not the Zastava stuff that we're, it's
not
currently,
Serbian.
Right. Real
Cold
Yugoslav.
War RPKs. Original parts kits, I believe unissued. They were just absolutely stunning. And those are out there right now. But again, parts kits. We would never get our hands on those things today in 2022 if it weren't for those parts kits being around, in Definitive Arms, who's an outstanding builder, one of the best in the country, putting them together.
Yeah.
Right.
And I believe those were all numbers matching, original barrels, unissued, like real. And I think that's what a lot of people miss. There are people that look at this from the outside and they're like, well, whatever, that should be like a $500 gun, Zastava or whatever it is,
parts kit
does that
costs more
thing.
than
It's
that.
like, well, you have to look back, right? These are guns that they're not made anymore. They're not made like this anymore.
And the parts kits with the barrels haven't been imported for years because
Exactly.
the ATF declared the barrel of all things to be a machine gun.
Exactly. So original barrel in parts kits generally commands a higher price because nowadays, like you say, you can't bring in a parts kit with this original barrel because it's considered a machine gun part.
Right.
You
So
know
you
what
have
I
to
mean?
use a U.S. barrel.
Exactly.
And,
so
yeah.
that's where you get into prices of things. Generally can get a little bit more elevated when you're talking original barrel numbers matching guns. And that's the cool part about parts kits is you can get it as close to military correct as possible.
Right.
And that's pretty cool. And that kind of brings me into the next AK realm, and we kind of got one sitting in front of us here from Lee Armory right now. These are like partial parts kits of a PSL, if you will. So like not an entire PSL, but what they did was they took what they had and kind of created a 54R carbine.
Yeah.
This is like the size of your regular AK-47, but shoots the 7.62 by 54R.
Using
And
PSL
currently-
mags.
Exactly.
And stuff. Yep.
And so right now, we've got a few of these at Copper, and we're getting a few more built. But again, it's limited numbers, right? Because you can only get, if they have 15 parts kits, we'll call it, and they put 15 of these together, then there's only 15 in existence. But I remember Waffen Works building these things a while ago.
They called them something, I can't recall the name of it. But yeah, it's really cool because, you do have PSL magazines. They're 10 rounders.
Right.
But having that 54R, I know you played with it quite a bit.
did.
Even suppressed it.
Yeah.
And I still have that one. That was a Vepper.
Yeah.
I traded you for that one. And that is a fun gun to shoot, a very, very fun gun to shoot. And again, like you said, parts kits and those PSL parts kits are available out there, but the PSLs are available too.
Exactly.
And the factory PSLs are getting really, really salty.
I want to say they're like $3,000 or something like that now.
And they're not worth that amount of money to me, just because the accuracy of them is just simply isn't there. It's more or less for a military collector at this point.
Right.
But there are several other guns out there. There's some guns out there that people have a high demand for now. AKs obviously are in high demand, but MP5s, right?
Yep.
So when HK was bringing them in, they couldn't give away the HK, the HK94. I keep calling it MP5, but they couldn't give away the HK94s. Nobody wanted them for about the same amount of money. They could buy it in 223 or 308, and so nobody bought them. And then the import ban happened, and everybody started clamoring for anything HK, right? And then you had the machine gun market after the 86 ban. You had people that were, leading up to the 86 ban, just building as many Sears as they possibly could. And a lot of those HK94s went from undesirable to highly desirable, and highly desirable by people that have oodles of money to spend for MP5s. And so they just disappeared. And of course, when they disappear from the market, that creates demand. People want what they can't have. We did a whole video on that.
I know, yep.
You can't give the FS2000 away. They stopped the manufacturing import of it. Now people are going to pay twice what they're worth.
$4,000, $5,000, or whatever the crazy number is. Yep.
And they didn't like the original price. They thought that $2,000 was ridiculous. They were going to buy that piece of junk for $2,000, but now they're clamoring for them for $4,000 to $5,000 because they're no longer imported.
Right.
So these parts kits represent a really unique opportunity, and we've seen this in previous collections. That barrel that you just showed is a friend of ours. And people buy these parts kits when they're available because they're dirt cheap when they first land, right? And then you just tuck them away. Forget you have them for 10 years, 15 years. You just quadrupled the value of the kit just by sitting on it.
Yeah.
Anything gun related, there's no time like the present to buy it because it's not going to get any cheaper. It just isn't, ever. parts kits, guns, whatever.
Right.
They're good investments. They're like fine watches and, rare vehicles or whatever. They just go up in value. And the parts kits have done the same thing. But MP5s.
Yeah, so speaking of MP5s, like you're on, this was kind of a cool thing. I know when these things arrived at Copper, I was like, I'm just going to kind of set it on top of these guns here, but I was really excited about this. And
we all were.
The reason why is you just don't see stuff like this. I mean, sure, you could buy a Zenith gun or even those old POF guns and kind of get a full bought MP5, and if that tickles your fancy, sure, great, whatever it is, have fun. But to have true German or true Swiss or, again, handguards or stocks or whatever it is that you couldn't get in the States because they're just so cost prohibitive, here it is an entire kit.
Right.
I mean, you're talking
the old school lights. Those are so cool.
The B&T lighted handguard. You had the Surefire lighted handgun. You had just kind of handguard. You had the, just regular handguard. But again, Swiss-made B&T handguard. Because again, B&T and HK are kind of hand in hand. They work together with each other.
They've worked a lot together.
Exactly. They have a huge relationship with each other. So they kind of go hand in hand.
And some of the parts kits that are available are B&T and some are H&K, correct?
Right.
And then they're going to have a mix because these came from B&T.
These were Swiss
They were demilled.
police.
Yeah, these were demilled by B&T and then shipped to the United States. And so they're going to have B&T parts on them. They're going to have old school not lights, optics like this.
Yeah, and they're B&T mounts. Like this particular one here, B&T made these mounts on here. This one's a little bit faded on it, but they also had some will have the like Swiss police crest still on the Trigicon optic, and this just using one of those.
Is that Trigicon or is that a
this is a Trigicon, like ACOG, if you will, but it's the.
Oh, that's so right, man. I was thinking. Yeah. I looked at that culminator in the front. I was thinking Meprolite.
Yeah, no, that's Trigicon, and that takes the place of the rear sight, and that screw would bolt in the rear sight, if you will, and take its place. But then you had like and the cool thing about these kits is they came with all their parts, if you will, including the cut like receiver stubs. I don't believe it included the middle section, so you couldn't like weld it back together.
Right. It's just the rear section for the locking pins and the rear sight that you can reuse, and then the trunnion on the front.
And then they had their trigger groups. They had 3-position. They also had we had some 4-position ones as well. And then I think one of the coolest pieces about these things.
Now these things can cost as much as a gun nowadays.
I know, these retractable stocks with the sling as well. I mean, $700, $800, $900, whatever it is, just for the stock alone. And then some of them had the visor stocks that we had as well, where it had the drop down for a riot visor, if you will. Yep. Cool stuff as well. And then I think it's pretty cool because some of the kits will have as well, like this has got a sticker on it for whatever ID it was. Exactly. For whatever, Swiss, German, whatever it is, and how they identified them. And this is a German magazine with a date code of IA on it. And then the cool thing is too is they come with a Swiss half-by-28 tri-lug brand new barrel. So not a US made barrel, but a Swiss made MP5 barrel. And it also comes with all the little small parts. And
so really all you need is a receiver and a trigger pack, and you can
semi-auto trigger
have it
pack,
built.
receiver, and then you can find somebody to have it built, and then you would have as close to humanly possible a real Swiss or German made MP5.
I think the B&T kits are really neat. I love the German kits, but the B&T kits are really neat because you just don't see B&T MP5s in the United States.
No.
Unless it's law enforcement. Even then, it's almost always German. I've never in my life seen a real B&T MP5. Yet with this parts kit, you can clone one and have a B&T marked MP5.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's really cool. Again, that gives you an option that you just simply otherwise wouldn't have.
Right.
Now, HK they resumed what they call it the SP5 now. They resumed the production of the HK94. They're bringing it in as a pistol. They brought some rifles in. I think I saw one somewhere with a 16-inch barrel. But and Zenith did as well. They brought in a handful of rifles with 16-inch barrels. But the HKs are unobtainium and very, very limited production, or at least it would appear to be, because there's just so few of them out there available.
Well, that's because everybody wants that original, right? And HK essentially being that original. Everybody is always, well, that's a POF. Where's it made? It's made off of, they always use it, HK tooling or whatever it is, or HK specs, because it's important to people. They want that, go back to that originality. And that's the cool thing about these parts kits. It's like it's as original as you get. And the cool thing is they're like late 80s, early 90s. So they're like there's a lot of nostalgia that kind of goes with that as well.
And those lights typically will work if you can get a battery into
They
them
will.
or get a bulb, and
They do.
Some of them are bulb. And I think there's LED replacements for some of the bulbs and stuff.
I came across an LED head on one of them.
Yeah.
It was just a screw-on replacement, and it was kind of cool. And but yeah, like again, you're gonna have the light bulbs of that era, right? Because it's late 80s, early 90s, if you will.
Like a whole 130 lumen.
Right. Super bright, light up the whole room. But the other
Candela
cool thing,
1, it has the brightness of a candle in a dark room. Very orange.
the other cool like HK thing that you can kind of come across with as well. Again, these are not guns that you can find from HK. They're not on their website. They're not selling to you, but like an HK 53, which here's a parts kit for
Formerly
an HK.
known as the HK 93 semi-auto in the U.S. market, but this would be the full auto version with the short barrel, the really cool flash suppressor on it.
Original barrel, you know, HK 53. And again, it's got all of its little pieces and parts and everything on there. And I want to say we only had a few of these, but again, German marked, LE only, you know, magazines.
Back in the day, yep. These are old law enforcement guns.
Right. Your Vic stock, all this stuff. These are all parts kits or retired, law enforcement machine guns, if you will. So, I mean, it's really cool. So you can have a builder, get your receiver, put them together as a semi-auto, compliance, all that other good stuff, and have as close to possible as a real HK-53.
I know Dakota Tactical does builds for people. But the thing is if you're not going to build it yourself, you're going to go to a builder, expect to wait.
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
just tell you up front. I remember years and years ago when I was still in the machine gun game, and Terry Dyer was still around, and I wanted to have a machine gun, an HK 93 converted to a 53. And it took 2.5 years for that conversion to be done.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say everybody's going to be waiting 2.5 years. This is decades ago. But that was decades ago. And this, I mean, what a greater segue than to mention Modern Gun School, right? Modern Gun School is an online gun school that takes the GI Bill, but it's a great way to learn a trade. And gunsmiths, as we both know, are in extremely high demand.
Right.
Once you put your shingle out and you make a few posts on social media, get an Instagram thing going, showing some of your work, you'll have people beating your door down, wanting to send you parts kits to have them assembled or have guns to work on. It is a great way to make a living if you're mechanically inclined. Sadly, I have 2 left hands, so I'm not. But, it's check out Modern Gun School, mgs.edu, and, consider becoming a gunsmith. Because if this is something you love, putting these parts kits together, you like building and working with your hands and making guns, hang out your own shingle, become a gunsmith, man.
Yeah.
Do it, because there's good money in it, and you can set your own hours. But once you build that reputation, man,
Right.
you'll be busy forever.
Yep.
So there are other cool guns that came in. Now, this is one, the PM63, another Cold War era submachine gun. This originally operated from an open slide. We have a spent case in there just to show safe. And these were imported, I think, by Pioneer Arms, but also parts kits were available. So when I picked this up, I also picked up a parts kit to use this as a blueprint to have it assembled at some point in the future, because the ones that Pioneer Arms imported, a little bit flaky.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have to just deal with some malfunctions. And I picked up a parts kit so I could have an extra recoil spring and things like that to try, fiddling with this gun. But also that parts kit at a later date can be assembled into one of these. I don't even know if these are still being imported or not, but should not be imported.
That's a really cool gun. I mean,
It is. Yeah. These are available in a number of different cartridges, but this one is chambered in 9x18 Makarov, and it's a really neat Cold War era gun. Has this really distinct, you can't really call it a muzzle brake, but I guess it is. It does push the barrel down during recoil. It's just it's a take on the slant brake of the old AK.
It's a big shovel
47s.
sticking out of there.
Yeah, right. It's like, you can use it as an e-tool if you don't use it for a submachine gun. But it would also have a little stock that folds up underneath here. But because this is a pistol, this has all been welded in place. But if you file a Form 1 or you build it from a parts kit on a Form 1, or you file a Form 1 on the existing pistols, you can break all those welds loose and get the stock working.
Right.
And that's the other thing I needed were stock parts, because I have intended to Form 1 this at some point, but I've never broken the welds on it because I haven't filed that Form 1 yet. But anyway, it's a very neat piece of Cold War history that you otherwise just simply wouldn't see on the U.S. market.
Right. And the cool thing is with parts kits, there's FAL, G3, PPS 43, AK, Uzi, MP5, HK53. The sky is the limit in terms of like parts kits.
Yep.
There's so many things.
There's people in Europe right now rummaging through old storage areas and looking for stuff and then finding it, demilling it, and bringing it into the United States. So keep your eye out because stuff is going to pop all the time. Now, it's not so much as of late. This current administration, ATF, I think, is holding up the works for imports of all sorts of things. But under normal circumstances, those parts kits, when they pop, man, if you're thinking about it, grab one because once again, they're not going to get any cheaper.
I completely forgot too. MG42, MG34, DPM.
Wiselight made a bunch of conversions that, Mark Omar worked with Wiselight. They did the collaborative.
The PKM.
The PKMs.
Oh my God.
You remember? And
RPD.
Yep, the RPDs.
Yep.
So there have been really, really cool parts kits out there that people have turned into commercial items, either selling them complete, like, the Wiselight and the Mark Omar and HMG guns. But yeah, man, put it together yourself because I don't think they make the PKM receivers anymore, but we haven't seen PKM parts kits in a long time. But when they were available, myself included, we hem-hawed around about it like maybe one day, then they're gone.
Yep.
And then those receivers that were made go from a reasonable amount of money to an unreasonable amount of money overnight. So it's like, well, that'll never happen.
Yep. The receivers used to be somewhat okay, and now they're like $1,500 or something crazy like that. If you can even find just the receiver, and then the parts kit alone is pretty wild. But again, that's where you can get some really cool guns for. Again, it can be really expensive, but it also can be pretty cheap. You know what I mean? So it all depends on what you get. It all depends on what you get and what you do and how much it entails to build it. But I also see you got another gun here that was essentially a parts kit.
Yeah. This is another little Cold War era gun. This one I picked up from Michiko right here on YouTube. He, like myself, is a big fan of Cold War era firearms. It has this long muzzle device on it to make, it of legal length. But again, this is a cool Cold War submachine gun, SA-23 or the CZ-25. It's this one's chambered in 7.62 by 25 Tokarev, and they were again available in other cartridges. But this is the cartridge that I chose because it's just so cool. But it is another neat little Cold War gun that has really odd features, but that is built from a parts kit.
Yeah,
and Misha has he has a couple of different companies that he works with to put things together. And I've gotten some pretty cool stuff from him over the years. And so when you get the parts kits coming in, snag them the second you see them because the parts kits were dirt cheap. I have another parts kit sitting here as well for another build for one of these. But snag them when you get that opportunity because they're affordable then. Nowadays, I don't even know what the parts kits for those go for. It just goes up. That's all I know. It never goes down. It always goes up.
So, I mean, that's kind of why I was excited about this topic and why I wanted to bring it up. I think it allows people the opportunity to get their hands on firearms that aren't normally available. They're not commercially available. You can get your hands on some really cool firearms and have them built, and again, most of the builders already know all the compliance and everything they would need to do. You can go online and find whatever compliance parts that you need to make these things, compliant. But it's really cool to see. I've been able to experience some really cool guns by getting parts kits and having them built. And right now at Copper available, you got these MP5s. I think there might be one or two of the 53s
left. Yeah.
You got these PSL like carbine things that we have from Lee Armory, and then again, there's all sorts of things that you can get your hands on. And I think right now at Copper with this video, we're just going to do a discount code on those MP5s right now.
Yep.
So we'll put that discount code, or you will, in the description somewhere on there.
Yeah.
So
if you guys are interested in picking up a parts kit, exploring the options that are out there and getting in even deeper into the world of military surplus firearms, I'm telling you, it's a rabbit hole that you'll enjoy going down because me as a military small arms collector, parts kits have opened up doors that otherwise would be closed to me. And so dig around, look around, see what you can find. I guarantee you'll enjoy the firearm once you either build it yourself or have it built because, again, you're going to have access to stuff that you just don't normally see. You're not going to walk into any gun store and see it sitting on the shelf.
Correct.
but you can put it in your own gun safe if you pick up that parts kit. All right, guys. Well, I look forward to the comments down below. We always like to read those comments, and many times we use those comments as content ideas for future videos. So please do comment down below, share our videos. That helps us here at the Military Arms channel. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel, the best way to do that is to become part of our Patreon family. You can do that by following the link in the video description below. Also, right here on YouTube, you got the join button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash that join button, and you can support us right here on YouTube. And last but not least, please check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 14 years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Take care, guys.